From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sonia Gray. President Nicolas Maduro has announced that Venezuela's cryptocurrency, the Petro, began operating globally on Monday. This digital currency is part of Venezuela's economic recovery and prosperity plan. The launch of the cryptocurrency seeks to capture foreign investment and will be used as an instrument of payment in the acquisition of goods and services. It is an important tool in the fight against the economic blockade. Venezuelans will also be able to use the Petro to protect their savings.
Beginning on November 5th, the Petro will go on sale on the Venezuelan public. You can buy it in sovereign bolivars and can save with a Petro certificate, which is backed in the Venezuelan oil. The Petro has a material certification and is backed and supported by Venezuelan oil, but also by law and by decree. I have incorporated in the white paper of the Petro the formula of the establishment of its value with respect to gold, diamonds, iron and aluminium. So, our Petro is born armored, with oil, wealth and meaning wealth. I proceed to sign the first copy of the white paper.
The president also ordered that the new Petro cryptocurrency be used for all future sales of Venezuelan oil and its derivatives. He invited Venezuelan business partners around the world to abide by this measure. Maduro also informed that the sale of international airline tickets, departure taxes at airports, payment for hotels, tourist arrivals and the sale of properties must be carried out in Petros as a way to promote and strengthen the use of the cryptocurrency. The Bolivarian government continues repatriating thousands of Venezuelans who decided to leave their country in search of better opportunities but never found them. In Lima, Peru, the Galindez Soto family are just one of so many of these stories. What they earn as informal vendors is barely enough to pay for a basic room where they sleep on mattresses on the floor. They stretch their money to feed their two children, Kenny and Rebecca. In the family's 11 months in Peru, they never found the country of opportunities that news and social networks painted.
Here we have to get the money. We have to work until our bodies give out, because the end of the month comes near, and we have to pay. In Venezuela, it was our own home, where we lived, our own space, and we are completely at ease there.
With the same luggage that they arrived with, they pack and leave for home. Kenny and Rebecca are like thousands of Venezuelan families who left their country to seek better opportunities, but instead joined an already long line of unemployed informal workers and people struggling to get by. Now they head home to Venezuela, taking advantage of the repatriation plan.
If I could go back in time, I would not have left Venezuela. Not for Peru, nor Ecuador, nor Colombia, anywhere else. I would have stayed in Venezuela, fighting for my country, to move forward.
Social and political movements in Venezuela have organized a demonstration in support of Palestine and to reject the international intervention in their country. Our correspondent has a story.
Plaza Bolívar in Caracas was the stage where Palestinians and Venezuelans gathered to reject the actions against the sovereignty of Venezuela promoted by the White House and its allies.
The Palestinian struggle has always been supported by Latin America, especially by Venezuela. We have shown our support for the people's fight against the world's aggressors.
Venezuela has maintained its support for the Palestinian people. The union of both nations was celebrated by young Palestinians that live in the South American nation.
We thank Venezuelans and President Nicolas Maduro for opening their doors. This is now our second country.
They say Venezuela is their second motherland. Hamse is one of the more than 1,000 young students who received a scholarship from the government to study medicine. He highlighted youth must defend itself from the international right wing.
As medicine students, we can provide healthcare where it still doesn't exist to the poor countries.
Education is a right for everyone. We, as Palestinians in Venezuela, are able to defend our rights and our country. We can protest the aggressions against our country.
They also thank the support of many governments at the 33rd United Nations General Assembly. Despite the situation, they continue to express joy and pride for their culture.
In an exclusive interview with Telesur, the Foreign Minister of Nicaragua, Dennis Moncada, spoke on the interference by the government of the United States and the attacks against democratic countries in Latin America.
We have to fight in a manner which is permanent, and it's part of the challenges we have in Latin America, the Caribbean and the entire world. We have to ensure that freedom, the independence and self-determination prevails, and we have to fight for non-interference by the powers of North American empire. We are against a policy of interference and permanent interventionism against our peoples, against our democratically elected governments, which are legitimate and constitutionally elected. We must put a halt to U.S. intervention specifically, and any other powers which may opt to intervene.
Nicaragua's Vice President and First Lady Rosario Murillo says the government is working on a national agreement for peace and reconciliation. It's aimed at putting an end to the political crisis that has engulfed the country since mid-April.
We are calling for a great national agreement on peace. That's the call we have made every day. Let's stand together. Let's join to defend our homeland. Let's join to defend peace.
Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto has hailed the deal reached between the United States, Mexico and Canada. He said the new deal is beneficial to all three countries and a win for labor and the environment. The United States, Canada and Mexico reached an agreement late on Sunday to replace the North American Free Trade Agreement with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or the USMCA.
I want to express my gratitude for the work of Mexico's negotiating team, who acted with great professionalism, dedication and patriotism. To the representatives of the President-elect, Mr. Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who were part of the process in its final stages, and to Mexico's private sector, in particular to those who contributed their knowledge and their experience throughout the entire negotiation. I deeply appreciate the constructive attitude of the representatives of Canada and the United States. Together we've forged a deal that benefits North America as a whole, while also protecting the national interests of each one of our countries.
Time now for a short break. More news after this.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. The Brazilian Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad visited former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in prison on Monday. Lula has been in jail since April, facing a 12-year conviction that makes him ineligible to run for president. With just 5 days to go until the election, the war of the polls is heating up. Last week, several polls show Haddad gaining ground on the far-right candidate, Jair Bolsonaro. This Tuesday, the latest poll from Ibope shows Bolsonaro rising to 31% against 21% for Haddad. The sectors most closely aligned with orthodox neoliberalism in Brazil are seeking to continue the project that came to power after the parliamentary coup against Dilma Rousseff. Their main representative in Sunday's election is the former governor of Sao Paulo, Geraldo Alckmin, of the Social Democratic Party, or the PSDB.
In 2014, the Brazilian Social Democratic Party lost the presidential election in the second round against Dilma Rousseff. However, it allied with the Temer government to implement neoliberal policies. Geraldo Alckmin, who governed Sao Paulo for over 12 years, is the face of the PSDB, aiming to continue on a national level a project that doesn't count on popular support.
For all I know about Alckmin, he does a lot of things for the country.
Alckmin has been in charge for years, and he did nothing. He left us with unfinished subway works. He doesn't deserve my vote.
Before, Alckmin was a very good politician, but he left us without building the subway. I am from a movement of homeless persons, and I am waiting for my piece of land, and Alckmin wants to take that right away from us.
Even though he seeks to differentiate himself from the far-right candidate Bolsonaro, in Sao Paulo, Geraldo Alckmin broke the national record for building prisons, and he now has 1/3 of the prison population in the country with the third largest number of prisoners on the planet. The neoliberal candidate promises to improve the program for the international evaluation of students, to lower the murder rate, to fight organized crime, and to create a national guard. Also, in a meeting with agribusiness leaders, he promised to liberalize gun laws in rural regions. Resources for the housing department in Sao Paulo were cut during Alckmin's administration to 1/10 of the budget for law enforcement.
To be the head of security, to work uncharitably to protect the life of you and your family, that is a mission for which I am absolutely ready.
The PSDB candidate is the symbol of orthodox neoliberalism. He offers the greatest promise of continuing Temer's policies.
Just like Temer, he defends the labor reform. He defends the law on expenditure that stops for more investment in health, education, public security, and violence against women. That means freezing investments in various sectors where they need to increase. In practice, Alckmin defends the same regime, just like he also defends the Temer government's privatizations.
The broad alliance of the PSDB with other right-wing parties, dubbed the Big Centre by Brazil's mainstream press, gave Alckmin 40% of the total propaganda time on television. He uses it to attack Venezuela and claims to be in the middle of a dispute between extremes, referring to the Workers' Party and Bolsonaro.
It's an austerity agenda of liberalism, like the one which led Argentina into its current situation. All of those candidates held up Macri as an example. And today we see in Argentina with high inflation, the dollar out of control, a situation of chaos in Argentina, which these candidates still see as an example to be followed.
Despite his advantageous access to publicity, Geraldo Alckmin is still lagging at 4th or 5th place in the polls. His failure suggests voters' rejection of the neoliberal project promoted by both the Argentinian and Brazilian governments.
Chileans are celebrating the decision of the International Court of Justice over the maritime dispute with Bolivia. People carrying flags have cheered the court's ruling in the capital Santiago while singing the national anthem. They believe the court has made the right decision by ruling that Chile isn't obligated to negotiate access to the Pacific Ocean for Bolivia.
The truth is that all of the territory from the north of Antofagasta to Arica, including Lima, we won with blood and fire. Actually, with more than blood and fire. So it was important for Chile not to surrender.
But Bolivians are disappointed with the ruling, but they also said it isn't a defeat and that the country should keep fighting for access to the Pacific Ocean. Hundreds gathered in the capital La Paz to listen to the final decision.
It has been an injustice to the world. Today Bolivia feels a little sad, but not defeated. Bolivia was born with sea, and sooner or later, Bolivia will have sea again.
From now on, the work we're going to have is to strengthen ourselves in all areas and recover it as Chile has done. We have no other way. We have to look for other instances to recover what was historically ours.
Workers in Costa Rica have been protesting for over 4 weeks against a fiscal reform plan pushed by the government. Both sides have failed to reach an agreement this Sunday to put an end to the ongoing strike. Unions say they shouldn't pay for the cost of the economic crisis hitting the country. Our correspondent in San Jose, Fernando Francia, has more.
The third week of the open-ended strike called by workers of the public sector has come to an end in the midst of dialogue attempts with the government. Workers are protesting against the fiscal reform proposed by the government that's currently discussed at the Legislative Assembly. Trade unions and workers are asking the government not to make them and the most vulnerable sectors pay the cost of the fiscal crisis the country is facing. The government has proposed a package with 4 bills that are under discussion. Workers are urging for a national dialogue to modify these proposals and for measures to avoid tax evasion. Protests, different events, and some road blockades continue.
We thank Fernando Francia for that report. Indigenous communities in Colombia are strongly rejecting a government's proposed land reform law. They say it violates elders' ancestral rights to land for the commercial benefit of a few.
Several indigenous organizations protested in Bogotá and Cundinamarca against a bill that aims to change the land law.
We've made a call to justice to protect our land and indigenous people's rights to it. Also, it's about the right to have prior consultation. We want them to order the Colombian government to throw out the draft law, which was presented in Congress. Native Colombians must be included in the consultation process.
Ethnic communities rejected the plan to change the 1994 law because they say it would violate the obligation to prior consultation. This would only benefit the few who hold the reins of economic power.
The right to own lands, cultural rights, such as language diversity, for example, would also be violated if the government fails to abide by the requirement of previous consultation. If not, all of the Colombian indigenous peoples will disappear. I'm talking about physical and cultural extinction.
Afro, Rizal, Paliquero, and rural peoples have always worked to protect the lands, the woods, the mountains, jungles and seas, and the ancestral cultures. They fight this government's plan because if they don't, they say it could lead to their extinction.
The right to own lands, cultural rights, such as language diversity, for example, would also be violated if the government fails to abide by the requirement of previous consultation. If not, all of the Colombian indigenous peoples will disappear. I'm talking about physical and cultural extinction.
Indigenous communities are calling on President Iván Duque and the Congress to protect these rights and in so doing preserve Colombia's ancestral communities. They say they are prepared to seek the intervention of international organizations should the government fail to heed their concerns.
The G20's Gender Equality Summit, known as the W20, has kicked off in Argentina. Its main focus is women's empowerment and how to get more female representation in institutions across the globe. On Tuesday, 65 delegates will discuss these and other issues related to women for 3 days. Members of Argentina's Central Workers Union are camping outside the National Congress to protest against the proposed national budget. They've pitched tents outside the building where they vow to remain until Friday as the national budget is set to be debated throughout the week. They're demanding that the government put an end to price hikes and budget cuts.
Protesters have been mobilizing throughout the day and will continue to do so for the rest of the week. State workers assembled in front of the Parliament building. They're rejecting the proposed law outlining the 2019 national budget. If the inflation rate exceeds 23%, this constitutes a recession. This is according to International Monetary Fund's demands. Workers aren't having it. They have taken to the streets to stage various forms of protest action over the next few days. They are also rejecting the agreement between Mauricio Macri's government and the International Monetary Fund.
In Trinidad and Tobago, Finance Minister Colum Inbert has ruled out a $7 billion national budget. With immediate effect, the cost of super gasoline will increase by $1 per litre. Inbert also announced an increase in public servants' pensions. The budget comes as the state-owned oil company Petro closes its refinery.
In order to minimize the overall negative effects of this inevitable decision to get out of refining, the Board of Petrotrin and the Oilfield Workers Trade Union have begun the process for ensuring that the employees of Petrotrin are provided with transitional finance for their reintegration into the national economy. The terminated permanent, temporary and casual employees of Petrotrin will be provided with attractive termination packages. Early estimates put this termination payment at approximately $2.6 billion.
Meanwhile, amid a turnaround in gas production, Trinidad and Tobago inked a major gas deal with Venezuela. Minister Imbert elaborated on that agreement during his presentation.
We have concluded the commercial negotiation for the sale of gas from the Dragon field in Venezuela. A pipeline, to be built at a cost of $1 billion, will be owned in a joint venture company between the National Gas Company and Shell Trinidad. The pipeline will transport the natural gas from eastern Venezuela to the Hibiscus platform off the north coast, which is owned by Shell Trinidad. The revival of the sector will be sustained as we move to conclude arrangements for cross-border gas in the Lauren Manatee fields, which straddle the maritime borders of both our countries.
We'll take another short break now. Stay with us.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The death toll in Indonesia after Friday's earthquake and tsunami has reached at least 1,300 people. According to authorities, 1,700 houses were destroyed. Energy and communication systems are still down. Desperate residents resolved to loot gasoline to try to reach villages yet to receive aid. In one of the hardest hit areas, the city of Palu, citizens are trying to recover their belongings while rescue teams continue to look for survivors in the northern region of the country. Catalan police and protesters clashed on the one-year anniversary of the independence referendum. Riot police repressed pro-independent demonstrators after a march in Barcelona. Nearly 200,000 people took part in the evening march from the Plaza Catalunya towards the Catalan Regional Parliament.
We're a little disappointed lately because we think that we need to take the final step, and right now we're at this point when we see that this is not happening and everything is very paralyzed, and the people are waiting for a push.
Gabon has arrested the crew of a Spanish tuna fishing vessel catching sharks without the proper license. The vessel was found carrying about 2 tons of sharks and their fins, mostly of blue sharks. This species is classified as near threatened, as 15% of Atlantic shark species are endangered. A dozen activists performing a sit-in against the U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh have been arrested in Washington. They were detained outside the Eisenhower Executive Office building after they refused to leave. Kavanaugh's nomination is under threat after being accused of sexual assault. Close to 100 people have been injured by Israeli forces in the seashore of the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces fired tear gas and gunfire to a naval march that protested the 12-year-long maritime blockade of the Strip. Following the gunfire, demonstrators were forced to stop their advance and return to shore. Palestinians in the city of Ramallah held a general strike against Israel's controversial nation-state law. Shops were shut down, government and financial institutions did not open, while businesses and schools suspended classes. The strike also marks the anniversary of the deadly October 200 clashes, in which 13 Israeli Arabs were killed by the Israeli police at the start of the Second Intifada. Indian school children across the country dressed up as Mahatma Gandhi to mark his 150th birthday. In the city of Rajkot, 150 students stood in formation of India's map while wearing bald caps, glasses, and the traditional robes of India's founding father. October 2nd not only marks Gandhi's birthday, but also the International Day of Non-Violence, which was an ideal that Gandhi fought for throughout his life. We end with the 2018 World Salsa Festival that has just ended in Cali, Colombia. Over 3,000 dancers participated in the event. This year's festival was marked by a high level of innovative dance styles. The international juries were impressed with how the dancers risked everything on stage and didn't hesitate to try something new. Over 1,000 children also competed in the contest. I'm going to that next year. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesio English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.
Telesur brings you a special